You know that feeling when you're laying in bed late at night, just mindlessly scrolling on your phone, and the algorithm serves you something deeply unsettling? Yeah. Picture watching a terrifying clip of someone squeezing through a subterranean rock crevice. So tight, so insanely constricting, it literally looks physically impossible. You watch them squirm in pitch blackness, surrounded by millions of tons of solid rock, and you can practically feel the walls closing in right there from the glow of your screen. It naturally makes you wonder, right? Why on earth would anyone risk their life, their comfort, and their safety for such an intensely claustrophobic hobby? It's a question that echoes in the minds of anyone who isn't an avid caver. But for one man back in 2009, a weekend adventure underground wasn't just some thrill-seeking exercise. It became a grueling 27-hour nightmare that ended with him being sealed inside the earth. Forever. In this explainer, we're diving into the truly harrowing reality of 26-year-old John Edward Jones. We're going to break down the exact series of events that unfolded deep underground and how a single, incredibly easy mistake in the dark created a permanent, inescapable tomb. So let's start with the history of the goo and the bizarre allure of the Nutty Putty cave. Discovered way back in 1960 by Dale Green and his friends, this cave gained a massive cult following for a really weird reason. It had a silly putty texture. Seriously, a strange, brown, clay-like mud covered both the floors and the ceilings. This viscous ooze made its notoriously tight spaces exceptionally slippery, unpredictable, and just undeniably strange. It definitely wasn't your typical dry, rocky cavern. And despite, or hey, maybe because of, that bizarre, claustrophobic nature, by 2006, this iconic Utah attraction was receiving over 5,000 visitors every single year. 5,000! Amateurs and professionals alike just couldn't resist the challenge of navigating those gooey, twisting tunnels. But here's the thing. The cave was a notorious booby trap for the inexperienced. It was wildly deceptive. In fact, before our main story even kicks off, search and rescue teams had already been called out 4 separate times just to save groups of Boy Scouts who'd gotten firmly wedged in the unforgiving mud and narrow chutes. It was a location that demanded respect and absolutely punished anyone who took a wrong turn. Which brings us to the fatal wrong turn on November 24th, 2009. On that day, John Edward Jones, a 26-year-old medical student, family man, and experienced outdoorsman, entered the cave with a large party. At one point, he split from the main group to find a famously tight but totally navigable passage called the birth canal. But in the disorienting, pitch-black darkness, John made a catastrophic mix-up. He crawled into an unmapped, dead-end vertical crevice known as Ed's Push, mistakenly believing it was his intended route. It's a terrifying reminder of how easily your senses can betray you underground. Thinking the space would eventually widen out, as cave passages often do, John pushed forward, entering the hole head first. But the crevice didn't widen. Instead, it quickly narrowed down to a terrifyingly small gap, just 10 inches wide and 18 inches long. To put that into perspective, guys, that is barely wider than a standard piece of printer paper. And before he even realized his fatal error, gravity simply took over. John was sucked down that slippery, clay-coated incline until he was wedged completely upside down. He was trapped at a near-vertical angle roughly 400 feet deep into the earth. His chest was compressed, his arms were pinned beneath him, and there was absolutely zero way to move backwards. This kicked off 27 hours of absolute agony and an impossible rescue operation. When his friends finally found him in this impossible position, they immediately went for help. A massive rescue team of over 100 people descended on the scene. But the tight angles and slippery mud made saving him nearly impossible. For hours, rescuers fought against the narrow walls, using drills to try and break the rock, and rigging up a highly sophisticated system of ropes and pulleys attached to his feet. Amazingly, they actually managed to pull John high enough to make eye contact, share a few words, and even give him some food and water. Hope was finally building. But then, absolute tragedy struck. The tremendous tension on the ropes proved to be way too much for the anchor points drilled into that soft, clay-covered rock. A pulley snapped. In an instant, hours of painstaking progress were lost. John violently slid back down into the vertical crevice, wedging in even deeper and more securely than he was before. Let's look at the medical reality and the terrifying biology of being trapped upside down. What makes this whole thing even more devastating is that As a medical student, John likely understood the exact grim science of what was happening to his body. It's basically a biological death sentence. The human body simply isn't designed to survive upside down for prolonged periods. Because he was inverted, blood pooled heavily in his brain and his lungs. His heart had to work incredibly hard just to pump against gravity, putting massive unsustainable pressure on his cardiovascular system. After 27 agonizing hours trapped in the dark, John passed away from cardiac arrest.
Which leads to the aftermath, a permanent tomb and sealing the cave forever.
After confirming the worst, the exhausted rescue teams evaluated the situation and realized that attempting to recover John's body from that 10 by 18-inch gap was far too dangerous. Continuing the extraction could easily cost more rescuers their lives. So, with his family's agonizing approval, authorities actually brought in explosives to intentionally collapse the ceiling of the crevice directly onto his body. Then, they poured concrete into the entrances of the cave, completely sealing it off. The Nutty Putty Cave became John's permanent tomb 400 feet underground. Today, the sealed entrance of Nutty Putty Cave stands as a quiet memorial. It's a clear-cut case of one tragic event ruining a destination for everyone else. Though, obviously, the real cost here was a human life. It serves as a grim, sobering reminder of how a single mistake in a harsh wilderness environment can lead to a permadeath scenario in real life. So, I gotta ask, after understanding the brutal reality of what happened to John Edward Jones, would you ever have the courage to go caving? Is this officially your new worst nightmare, or do you still have the nerve to explore the unknown depths underground? Let me know your thoughts on this explainer down in the comments below. Stay curious, stay safe, and as always, trust me, bro.